Linda Carter is one of the most emotionally complex and memorable characters in EastEnders, and her biography and early journey reflect a woman shaped by love, loyalty, and the slow discovery of her own strength. Linda was born and raised outside of Albert Square, in a close-knit, working-class family environment that emphasized togetherness, humor, and emotional openness. From a young age, she developed a warm, expressive personality and a strong sense of responsibility toward the people she loved. Unlike many residents of Walford, Linda did not grow up surrounded by chaos or crime. Instead, her early life was defined by stability and ordinary aspirations, which later made her confrontation with hardship all the more devastating. Her sense of identity was deeply tied to family, particularly her relationship with Mick Carter, whom she met when she was still young. Their bond became the emotional foundation of her life and in many ways the starting point of her adult journey. Linda's startup phase was inseparable from her marriage and motherhood. Before arriving in Walford, she lived a relatively conventional life, focusing on raising her children and supporting Mick, while nurturing a shared dream of running a pub. This dream was rooted not in ambition or profit, but in Linda's belief in community, hospitality, and belonging. When the opportunity arose for the Carters to buy the Queen Vic, Linda embraced it as both a family adventure and a chance to build something meaningful together. Moving to Albert Square marked the true beginning of her public and professional identity. Overnight, Linda transformed from a private woman into one of the most visible figures in the square, expected to juggle business responsibilities, social leadership, and emotional availability for an entire community. In her early days as landlady, Linda's inexperience was evident, but so was her determination. She approached the role with instinct rather than calculation, relying on warmth, empathy, and sincerity to connect with customers. The Queen Vic under Linda's care became more than a business. It was a refuge, a place where people felt heard and welcomed. However, this emotional openness also made her vulnerable. The pressures of running a struggling business, managing finances, and being constantly scrutinized by the community began to erode her confidence. Unlike more hardened figures in Walford, Linda took criticism personally, internalizing failure as a reflection of her worth rather than as a temporary setback. Despite these struggles, Linda's early journey was marked by quiet perseverance. She learned on the job, adapting to crises, disputes, and the relentless demands of pub life. Each challenge forced her to grow, even when growth came through pain. Her reliance on family, especially Mick, remained central during this period, reinforcing her belief that strength came from shared effort rather than individual dominance. Linda's beginnings were not about ambition in the traditional sense, but about commitment to her marriage, her children, and the idea that community matters. Linda Carter's biography and early rise in Albert Square tell the story of a woman who did not seek power or recognition, yet found herself carrying immense responsibility. Her foundation was built on love and emotional honesty rather than strategy, setting her apart from many other figures in Walford. These early chapters laid the groundwork for both her later struggles and her resilience, showing that Linda's greatest strength was never perfection, but her willingness to care deeply, even when doing so came at a personal cost. At the height of her journey in Albert Square, Linda Carter experienced a period that can best be described as her emotional and social peak, a time when she stood at the very centre of Walford life and embodied the role of the Queen Vic landlady in its most complete form. During this era, Linda was not merely running a pub, she had become its heartbeat. The Queen Vic thrived as a place of warmth, laughter, and communal connection, and much of that success was rooted in Linda's personality. She knew her customers, remembered their struggles, celebrated their joys, and instinctively understood when someone needed a kind word or a firm boundary. In this peak period, Linda's confidence grew steadily, shaped by experience rather than illusion, and she finally seemed comfortable occupying a role that once overwhelmed her. Professionally, this was the time when Linda balanced the demands of business with the emotional labor of community leadership. She learned how to handle financial pressures, staff conflicts, and unpredictable crises without losing her sense of self. Her instincts, once dismissed as naive, proved to be her greatest asset. By leading with empathy, Linda fostered loyalty among both customers and staff, turning the Queen Vic into a genuine sanctuary amid the chaos of Albert Square. People trusted her, not because she was flawless, but because she was present, honest, and deeply invested. This trust elevated her status, transforming her from a nervous newcomer into one of the square's most respected figures. On a personal level, Linda's peak was closely tied to a renewed sense of unity within her family. During this period, her marriage to Mick felt stable and grounded, anchored by shared purpose and mutual support. Together, they functioned as a team, navigating challenges with a sense of partnership that reinforced Linda's belief in love and togetherness. As a mother, she appeared more secure and self-assured, confident in her ability to protect and guide her children while maintaining her own identity. This balance between family and responsibility allowed Linda to feel whole in a way she rarely had before. Emotionally, this era represented a rare alignment between Linda's inner world and her outward life. While she still carried insecurities, they no longer defined her. She laughed more freely, trusted herself more deeply, and allowed herself moments of joy without guilt. Her relationships with other women in the square, including Sharon Watts, matured into mutual respect rather than rivalry, reflecting Linda's growth into a more grounded and self-aware person. She no longer felt the need to prove her worth. Her presence alone was enough. This peak period stands out not because Linda's life was free of hardship, but because she met those hardships with resilience and clarity. It was a time when her strengths, empathy, honesty, and emotional courage were fully realized and widely recognized. Linda Carter's time at the top was not defined by power or dominance, but by connection and trust, marking her as one of the most authentic and impactful landladies the Queen Vic had ever known. Building on her own journey, Linda Carter's reflections on Sharon Watts reveal a perspective shaped by admiration, vulnerability, and a growing sense of emotional kinship. Linda has often spoken about Sharon as a woman who embodies survival in its most hardened form, someone who has endured repeated losses and betrayals without ever fully leaving the square behind. From Linda's point of view, Sharon represents a kind of strength that is both intimidating and inspiring, a woman who has learned to protect herself through sharp instincts and emotional restraint. Linda has admitted that when she first arrived in Walford, she found Sharon difficult to read and even harder to approach, sensing a wall built from years of disappointment. Yet over time, that very distance became something Linda learned to respect rather than resent. Linda has shared that she sees Sharon as a natural leader, particularly in business and crisis, someone who understands how quickly the ground can shift in Albert Square. While Linda leads with her heart, Sharon leads with experience, and Linda has openly acknowledged that she has learned valuable lessons simply by watching how Sharon navigates conflict. Sharon's ability to remain composed under pressure, to separate emotion from decision-making when necessary, is something Linda has both envied and aspired to. At the same time, Linda has observed that this toughness comes at a cost, noting that Sharon often carries her pain in silence, refusing comfort even when she needs it most. One of the most personal aspects of Linda's reflections centers on Sharon's capacity for loyalty. Linda has spoken about moments when Sharon stood firm beside people she cared about, even when doing so was unpopular or risky. To Linda, this quiet loyalty reveals the depth of Sharon's character, challenging the perception that she is purely self-interested or emotionally distant. Linda has suggested that Sharon's guarded nature is not a lack of feeling, but a response to a lifetime of emotional wounds, particularly those rooted in family loss and complicated love. Linda has also drawn parallels between Sharon's grief and her own struggles, especially in moments when both women were confronting their darkest fears. She has spoken about recognizing the familiar signs of emotional exhaustion in Sharon, the same numbness and isolation Linda herself experienced during her battle with addiction. In these moments of recognition, Linda's words soften, expressing a desire to offer Sharon the same compassion she once needed herself. She has reflected that seeing Sharon survive profound grief without collapsing entirely changed her understanding of what resilience can look like. Ultimately, Linda Carter's reflections on Sharon Watts reveal a relationship defined less by overt friendship and more by mutual respect and shared endurance. Linda does not romanticize Sharon or place her on a pedestal. Instead, she sees her as a deeply human figure, shaped by pain, choice, and survival. Through Linda's eyes, Sharon becomes not just a formidable presence in Walford, but a woman whose strength was earned at great emotional cost. These reflections underscore Linda's own growth, showing how she has learned to recognize and honor forms of strength different from her own, and how shared hardship can create understanding even between two very different women.